You're listening to WCCO Radio. My guest is Congressman Robert Wexler. You may recall him from Stephen Colbert. Well, we'll talk about that in a little while. I can't help myself, Congressman.
Oh, I don't blame you.
But the name of the book, Fire-Breathing Liberal, How I Learned to Survive and Thrive in the Contact Sport of Congress. Before we took a break, we were talking about Scott McClellan. He was up in front of you this last week. Let's talk about not just what he said, but what it is that Congress intends to do about it, if anything.
Well, Scott McClellan essentially admitted during his hearing that Vice President Cheney is a primary suspect in the leaking of Valerie Plame's covert status as a CIA agent. An extraordinary revelation. He also said, remarkably, that it would be a pleasant surprise if more White House aides came before the Judiciary Committee to tell the truth. Scott McClellan issued, I think, the most damning political indictment yet of the inability of this administration to be forthright with the American people, and he challenged the Democrats to pull in people like Karl Rove to come and testify before the committee, and he also, I think, made a remarkable revelation in terms of the press, and he essentially said that the press failed the American people in the run-up to the Iraq War because it failed to challenge the assertions of the administration. Now, in fairness, the Congress, too, failed in that challenge, and we deserve our share of the blame or the responsibility. But he, I think, aptly said that the media failed the American people, too.
Post 9/11, it seemed that there was a huge fear that anyone would be seen as unpatriotic. I think about Congress. I think about the debate about whether or not we should all be wearing lapel pins, and I was pretty much repulsed by that. But
right.
I also think about what it is that the media didn't do. They didn't follow up. They didn't push. And I still remember seeing David Gregory going after Scott McClellan at the White House, and it was almost the first time, and it was years after the fact, when he started actually asking questions. And I thought, boy, I don't recall hearing that at all in 2 years, more.
Well, I think that's a keen observation. And in my book, I mean, part of what I try to do is argue that liberals, progressives, need to have a bigger role so that we can take back our government and we can start asking all the questions that should have been asked for the last 6 years. And what I also try to do in the book is humanize the process of politics and point out that while, yes, I go toe-to-toe with Republicans on TV, on radio, committees, but that we're all patriots in the end. We all want to do what's right for the country, and there's a degree of civility and respect that I think benefits the American political community if we don't try to make villains of our opponents. And I also tried to demystify Congress and let people understand just how it works, which I think would give people both more confidence and would probably at times infuriate them further.
Thank you for staying with us on today's 830 WCCO. We've been spending the hour with the author of Fire-Breathing Liberal, Congressman Robert Wexler. Congressman, looking to what's going on right now, the biggest concern for Americans is the economy, is the question of oil and energy independence. I just spent the last couple of weeks talking with a whole series of Republican congressmen and senators about the need to drill off the coast of Florida, off the coast of California, and we know that the former governor of Florida, Jeb Bush, strongly opposed this. Now we know that Governor Christ seems to be flip-flopping back and forth. Where should we go on this, and how do you feel?
The Bush Energy Department itself estimated that if we were to open up the pristine shores of Florida, for instance, for drilling now, we wouldn't see an ounce of energy come from that until well after 2017. What we need to do to relieve our dependency on oil is create an urgent effort to develop alternative fuel sources, whether it be solar energy, whether it's clean coal, wind, wave currents, and yes, we must consider nuclear power as well. We put a man on the moon and brought him back safely when President Kennedy challenged us. We won World War II by creating a Manhattan Project to develop an atomic bomb. We need to do the same thing with respect to creating alternative energy sources. How pathetic it is that we, the strongest nation on earth, are dependent on the graciousness of the Saudi Arabian government to pump a little bit more oil. We have to end our dependency, like Tom Friedman wrote in an editorial a few days ago. We need to break our habit, and the way we do it is by developing alternative sources of oil. It's not by, in essence, giving us more of the habit, and in the context of offshore drilling in Florida and in California and in other pristine areas, endangering the environment and also endangering the economy. One other thing, there are 63 million acres already open and permitted for exploration of oil and gas in America and in our waterways that have not been utilized yet. Why are we going about giving more federal land to the oil companies? This is about a land grab that the oil companies want before Bush and Cheney leave office, and I think most Americans ought to be shaking their head and say, why? And John McCain's got a lot of explaining to do, because in his tax program, he has yet more tax reductions for oil companies like ExxonMobil. He wants to give them $1.2 billion in tax deductions. That's not the way to relieve our dependence on oil.